Yeah. How you doing, Trent? Yeah, you said my name right. It's Jadiel. Yeah. I'm really enjoying these conversations, and the topics that you bring up is really interesting. Really gets really deep. Uh, so, but to the specific conversation of the law and the feast days, just want to address a couple of statements that you made. You said the first statement was he was like, how do we define what's ceremonial and what's moral as far as the law is concerned? Then you said there's no absolutes, but saying there's no absolute is an absolute. You're actually saying that no one can know the difference between ceremonial and moral. When in actuality, that's not true. I'm just going to show you why I believe it's not true. Uh, just simple fact that the term ceremonial and moral both define its terms. I looked up the word ceremonial, and it means anything that deals with, incorporated in, or pertains to a ceremony. Then I looked up moral, and it said anything that um, instructs or anything that deals or pertains to good and bad behavior as far as lifestyle, as far as rules on how to live, or an idea. Your morals will be your ideas on how you should live, what's right and wrong for you, and what right and wrong for me is my morals. Uh, so when God made a ceremonial and moral law, He made a ceremonial law dealing with ceremonies, and He made a moral law dealing with good and bad behavior. So that was just one question that you had, and uh, so there is a definite way to distinguish the two laws, especially since even Sister White mentioned that there is two separations, a ceremonial and moral. We wouldn't receive that information that there's two, and yet have no information to distinguish which is which as far as each law. Like it doesn't make sense to know that there's two and not know how to distinguish the two. We're told there's two so we can put the law in its proper place. The ceremonies dealing with that which pertain to Christ, the shadow of what Christ would represent. Um, of course, you already know the priesthood represented Christ, the sacrificial law represented Christ, and the tabernacle represented the ministration of Christ in heaven, the tabernacle in heaven. Um, I know you said that there's sacrifices before the temple, and you said that there were commandments before Sinai, and just to add another thing, there were food laws also before Leviticus. So I completely agree with you on distinguishing that point. But at the same time, you can clearly see what's ceremonial and what's dealing with your lifestyle or your behavior in life. You can clearly see that sacrifices were ceremonial, not pertaining to behavior or lifestyle. You can clearly see that the commandments that Abraham kept were both because he both made sacrifices. He did also circumcision. So he did ceremonies as well as kept the other commandments, which dealt with morality. Uh, and then we see the food laws, which Noah also knew which one were clean and unclean. So that was dealing with lifestyle. But you can see after the flood, Noah gave a sacrifice to God, showing that he understood the ceremonies that he gave to God, a thank offering. So uh, it's pretty simple. If we read Hebrews 6 to 10 in its context, especially dealing with the first covenant, we can clearly see the things that pertain to um, the ceremonies that were actually done away with, the things that Jesus came to fulfill. The Levitical priesthood, everything dealing with the priests and the priest ceremonies represented Christ. the sacrifices that they did daily, including on the feast days and on the Sabbath days. It was basically done every day, which were representing Christ. So Christ has done away with the sacrificial law. Um, and I mean, you can clearly see which one goes into which category. Uh, you can read Leviticus, you can clearly see that, the things dealing with fornication and sleeping with your sister and animals. And if an animal, you could clearly see that that deals with good and bad behavior. That deals with the morality of God's people, which goes into the moral law as well as the Ten Commandments. Uh, Now, I do agree with you. You said that the covenant does not mean the word covenant means agreement, and it's not a new law, it's a new agreement. And that is what I was trying to put through as far as James chapter 2, when it mentioned a law in Leviticus and mentioned that it was a moral law, or the royal law, or the law that we are to still keep, and that convicts us of sin because of our behavior. It was actually referring to a certain type of behavior called partiality, and said that how that affects loving your neighbor. Also, um, there are certain things that you mentioned about things that are done away. Hebrews chapter 9 actually talks about what's fulfilled is getting ready to be done away. The things that are done away. In Pentecost, there's no there the day of Pentecost. There's no mention of the apostles partaking in sacrificial ceremonies. Um, And if they did, it wouldn't really matter, for the simple fact that uh, when Jesus died, the veil ripped. And that was a indication that there was no more temple ministration on earth. Um, if the disciples didn't know that clearly, it would be understandable considering the fact that Jesus died like 40 days ago. You know, um, you said whatever's done in type. Now we're going to go into the type and antitype. Whatever's done in type is done in antitype. Let's take Passover, the Passover feast, as an example. Uh, Jesus said to his disciples, let me turn to the actual verse. It's in Luke. Okay, it's in Luke chapter 20. Should be possibly 23. Let me see. Oh, Luke chapter 22, verse 15 to, basically 15 to 20 is the whole Passover uh, feast. Um, and it said, from verse 15, it says, "And he said unto them, with desire, I have desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer." Just a clear indication, a clear note, a side note. As you can see here, it's two things that's actually called the Passover. The feast is called Passover, and the lamb is called Passover also. So that's why Jesus said that with desire, I have desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. And he says, "For I say unto you that I will not any more eat thereof until it be fulfilled in the kingdom of God." So there's a time when he will eat it. And he says, "And he took the cup and gave thanks and said, Take this and divide it among yourselves. For I say unto you, I will not drink of the fruit of the vine until the kingdom of God shall come." And he took the bread and gave thanks. And you understand what he's instituting. He's not instituting a new day called communion. He's actually instituting a new meal because of the lamb that he was going to fulfill at his death. He was instituting the bread and the blood, which represented the true meal. the true Passover meal. The way that Passover will pass over us in the last days, the way that the death angel will pass over us in the last days by having Jesus and the blood covering us. So the blood of the New Testament and the body that was broken for us, the faith in Jesus Christ and the New Testament, the law in our hearts, um, actually signified a new Passover for us. Most people take it and they named it communion, but Jesus said it's Passover. It's the same day, it's the same uh, institution. There's nothing fulfilled because Jesus said, I will eat it at the end with you. I will break bread and drink the fruit of the vine with you in the kingdom of God. So there's an indication that we ought to continue to do it as often as we come together. And at the same time, there's no indication saying that it's called communion now. It's still Passover. It's just that the Passover lamb and the sacrifice that was done on that day was fulfilled. Um, this topic actually goes deeper than what we're actually doing with this topic. And if I'm missing anything, or if we want to have like a special topic based on this, we can go through Hebrews. Matter of fact, I think I'm gonna make a video breaking down Hebrews to show what the old covenant actually was that was done away with or that passed away. All right. I hope this was informative, and if there's anything I'm missing or anything that needed correction, feel free to let me know. You could write it or make a video. All right, Trent. Talk to you later.